All right.
I both hate and love us.
Yep.
So what are we doing today, Alan?
Today, Erin, we are talking about some fan fiction that we have read.
Oh, shock of all shocks.
I know.
We are 6 episodes in. That should not be news to you. If it is, I'm so sorry.
So what is it? It's general tag first, right? Mm-hmm. And the general tag this time around is SickFic.
I have to cop to something. SickFic is my, ultimate, fantasy, thing I want to have happen to me fanfic. Ooh. Because when I'm sick, I am pathetic. I lose any semblance of being able to help myself. I am sad. It's when I mostly am like, I just want someone to give me soup and cuddles. Oh. It's truly baby blubbering bad.
Yeah.
So SickFic is my fluffiest little deepest fantasy thing.
Love that.
Which is why I love SickFic.
That's so interesting. I think that's something I don't share with you. Not necessarily that I would hate it if someone brought me soup and cuddled me when I felt bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just never been a thing. I think because I had a boyfriend at one point when I got sick. Mm-hmm. And it was very sweet. And he brought me a little care package. And it was very cute. But I just feel miserable always when I'm sick. And I'm I don't want to see you.
Oh, yeah. My impulse is not that. I think part of it is that my love language is very much acts of service.
Oh, I see.
So that is a very act of servicey thing. And also, because I'm asexual, SickFic is very often just purely affectionate.
That's so true.
It'll be physical intimacy, but it won't necessarily be sexual.
Yeah.
Because they're I don't want to get you sick. So it'll just be really cute taking care of each other's
Fascinating.
stuff. Which is what my asexual ass fantasizes about. Because that's what I want.
Oh, Erin. I hope you get sick soon. So our AU tag this week is College AU.
Yeah. Which is less of a thing for me. I like a good college AU.
Yeah. This to me has always been kind of I won't say go-to, but I like top 3 AUs. I love a good college AU.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. What makes me sad is that I feel like I didn't have that experience because my college was a 45-minute drive from my house. So it's it made no sense to pay room and board. And everyone just drove home. Everyone lived with their parents. So I didn't get the college experience, moving away and getting bonding with people who are also homesick and going home for the holidays. Yeah, so I think that's why I have such a soft spot for college AU because I'm trying to live the college experience I didn't have.
That's fair. I had the very idyllic
Yeah.
Small liberal arts college experience. Yeah. Everyone lived on campus. I went to a women's college in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
So it had its own culture, its own thing. And so I think because I experienced that version of college, some college fic doesn't resonate with me the same way that other college fics resonate because we didn't have we had a sports culture, but it was more queer. It was
Amazing.
Rugby and crew.
Cute. And
we didn't have the frat sorority thing. We didn't have any Greek life. And we didn't have a whole lot of the trappings of a big state school. Mm-hmm. So it was very idyllic, but it was very small.
Yeah.
I loved my college experience, but I recognized that it was fairly niche.
I guess we should start with some SickFic. Do you want to go first or shall I?
I can go first if you want.
Sure.
So, the SickFic you sent me is called Theraflu and You by ikeracity? ikeracity? ikeracity. It is a X-Men First Class 2011 fandom fic on Archive of Our Own. Alan picks his ships and he sticks with them.
I won't take this from the one who keeps sending me Star Wars.
That's fair. I'm not allowed to throw stones from my glass house, but I will anyway, because I live risky. And the summary of this fic is, the story of Charles' proposal to Eric will never fail to make Charles blush. Eric summarizes it as, he literally threw the ring at me, to which Charles will always protest, there's more to the story than that. Rumor mill verse backstory, how Eric and Charles got engaged. I think this is part of a larger series.
Yeah.
But it stands alone, I think.
Yeah.
It's also a proposal fic, Alan. So it is equal parts SickFic and proposal fic. So look who's doing 2-in-1s now.
I'm taking a page out of your book.
Yeah. It's also one of my favorite things that fandom does, which is do the little call-out scenes to their own universes, where it's like, okay, there's a larger story, and then this is the story of what happened within that I didn't get to.
So cute.
I love when that shit happens. I loved this.
Yeah.
It was so cute.
It was.
The story starts by recounting their 4th date. Yeah. So they've been on 3 dates up to this point, Eric and Charles. Once again, Eric Lensher and James McAvoy.
Character name, James McAvoy.
I choose to believe it's James McAvoy. I also find James McAvoy very attractive.
He's so attractive.
They're about to go on their 4th date, and Eric gets really sick. And kind of stands up Charles. Not intentionally. He just doesn't call him, and he's just at home, like, on the couch, being like, oh god, I'm in so much misery right now. Oh shit, I need to call Charles. He's probably at the restaurant. This is really bad. And he calls him about half an hour late, and is like, hey, and Charles is like, are you okay? And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna make it. And Charles is like, you sound awful. And Eric's like,
you sound like you're literally dying.
I feel really terrible. Thanks for asking. And Charles is like, what do you need? I'm coming over. I'm bringing soup. Eric's like, I've got Tylenol. I'm fine. And he was like, child, no. And he's like, all right, I will be there in 3 minutes with chicken soup and Tamiflu. Or
Theraflu.
Theraflu. Tamiflu is the prescription version. So Charles comes over and comforts an Eric. And it's very cute. Because Charles is like, oh, you look worse than I thought you would. This is real bad.
And Eric is just so embarrassed.
He's like, I know, I'm a hot mess.
Yep.
And he makes him drink the Theraflu. And he, like, mixes it up. And he's like, I know it's gross, but you have to drink it anyway. And he's like, I don't wanna. And, like, I relate so hard to Eric right now. Because I'm like, I also hate taking medicine, even when I know it's good for me. So Charles is like, no, you're gonna drink it all. And he's, like, kind of strong arms him into taking it. He tucks him in, and he's like, okay, like, I'm gonna go eat something out of your refrigerator because I'm hungry. And Eric's like, okay, have fun. Also, the restaurant takeout menus are by the refrigerator. And Charles is like, you don't have any food. What do you eat? And he was like, that's why there's takeout menus. And I was like, oh my god. So he falls asleep, and then he wakes up, and Charles is asleep on the bed next to him, and it's really cute. And, like, it's the first time that he's sort of seen him in a more vulnerable state. Yeah. Because he's very sort of, like, well put together and very, like, formal a lot of the time. And this is the first chance that Eric has to see him as soft Charles.
Soft Charles.
There's a line that says, Eric thinks a bit stupidly that he might be in love. Yeah. Oh. He's so sweet. He's so cute. And then Charles wakes up and is like, oh, you've still got a fever. Like, are you sick? Like, what's going on? What else can I do for you? Eric is feeling a little bit better, but the Theraflu kicking in makes him a little loopy, so he's a little bit more open with his thoughts than he normally would be.
There's a thing where he wakes up the next morning and Eric's like, I have to get to work, and Charles is like, I've already called in for you, don't even try it.
And Eric's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, and his quote is like, will you just marry me and be done with it?
Yeah, and Charles is a little taken aback by that, because again, date 4.
Yep.
But he was like, ask me again when you're you're not so drugged up. And it was really cute. The second half of the fic flashes forward a couple of years, and they've been together, and they're going to go out to eat. And Charles gets sick.
Ooh, role reversal. How the turntables. So Charles is now sick, and Eric comes home and is anticipating just, like, grabbing something and heading out, and then meeting him at the restaurant, and finds Charles and is like, oh shit, like, no, we're not gonna do this. Yeah, so he was at the restaurant and then did not hear anything from Charles, so he rushed home to find out what was the matter.
Yeah, and was like, are you okay? Yep. Finds him on the couch, like, bemoaning his current state of affairs.
Exactly.
And is like, you are super sick. Oh no. And Charles is like, no, you are not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to see me. This is ruining everything.
He's like, we're supposed to be at the restaurant. We have to go.
Eric's like, you are sick. You're not going to this restaurant right now. And he's like, no, I have a plan. We have reservations. Yeah. This is important. And Eric is like, you are too sick. How many more times must I say it? Sit down. And Charles is like, no, we're gonna go. Look, I can stand up. And he gets really woozy. Yep. And Eric is like, yeah, I have a lot of faith in you. Sit your ass down. So he drugs him up with Theraflu. And as we know, Theraflu makes people a little loopy. So Charles is really upset, and he's like, it was going to be perfect. It was going to be the best thing ever. And Eric's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? And he goes, the thing. It was going to be perfect. And he becomes this, like, blubbering mess. Yeah. And Eric's like, we're not making any sense. Like, what's going on? And then Charles basically just hands him his suit jacket.
So Eric keeps asking, like, well, what's wrong? And at some point, Charles just reaches into his coat pocket, grabs the box, and throws the ring in his general direction.
The ring box. And Eric is like, is this what I think it is? And Charles is like, yeah, that's why I'm sad. He's like, I'm really sad about this. And I can't believe that this is what happened. And, like, kind of starts crying. He's like, oh my God, I, like, jumped the gun on this. Like, can you wait until I feel better to reject me? Because I can't take both. And I'm just like, oh, precious baby. I can't believe I showed you that. I hate Theraflu. That's what he says. And Eric's like, no. I'm saying yes. Like, wait a minute. No. Yeah. I'm saying yes. Calm down. It's okay. So he, like, puts the ring on, and he's like, yes, of course, like, this is great. He asks, will you really marry me? Like, me? Yeah. And Eric's like, yeah, of course I'm gonna marry you. Like, why would you think I would ever say no? Charles harkens back to the will you marry me and just be done with it thing. And Eric is like, isn't that exactly what I said to you? And he was like, shut up. It was part of the speech I don't get to make because I'm sick. Yep. So they kiss, and it's great. And Eric's like, okay, well, we have to do this again when you're not drugged up. And Charles is like, I'll probably forget all of this. So yeah, we're gonna have to do this again. And then Charles passes out because he has a really high fever. Yep. So then the next morning, Charles comes into the kitchen and is like, a little dodgy. Doesn't fully remember what happened. Clearly doesn't remember the proposal. And is like, did we miss dinner? Like, what happened? Very like, almost like a morning after, like, drinking thing. But with Theraflu. I need to understand what the after effects of Theraflu
We'll buy some. We'll try it.
That's what this is. And Eric's like, yeah, we missed dinner. And Charles is like, shit. How long were you sitting there? Like, how much did I fuck this up? And he's about to sort of back away and, like, not do the thing. Yeah. And Eric is like, aren't you gonna ask me a question? And Charles is like, What? Me?
Your question?
What are you talking about? And Eric's like, just ask.
Yeah.
Just ask me. And Charles is like, And Eric's like, the ring is in your right pocket, I put it back. Charles is like, fuck. Oh, no. And then Eric's like, you asked me already. You gave me the ring. I put it back because I thought you might want to ask me again when you weren't delirious off of Theraflu. And he was like, did I give the speech at least? And he's like, no. And I was like, God damn it.
I worked really hard.
On that speech. I rehearsed it. There were metaphors and special anecdotes. And he was like, you didn't really say anything. You just threw the ring at me. What? You flung the ring box at me. And that's what happened. And Charles is like, well... And then Eric's like, well, I said yes, so it's fine. And Charles is like, you said yes?
That's where you should have started.
And then Eric says, you're unusually slow this morning. Which is so cute and, like, so real life. I was like, that's the partner I want.
Yes.
And so they have a sort of enthusiastic morning, and they are going to get married, and it's very cute. And it wraps up with a sort of button at the end where they're talking about their wedding and, you know, what they're going to do next and, you know, how big their wedding is going to be. And then
all the logistics.
And then it sort of has a thing where Charles says something like, I'll get the Theraflu ready. And it becomes this, like, euphemism for sex.
Yes, that's right.
Amongst their friend group who have, like, heard this story now, which is super funny. So I guess Eric is kind of a dick at work. And the end of the fic talks about him getting a little bit of, like, razzing from his staff, but, like, being really happy and, you know, sort of reveling in the newly engaged of it all. And I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I was very happy about it. It ticked every box for me.
We made it, everyone. 6 episodes. We did it.
Alan did a good thing.
Yes.
So I would rate this, like, 4.6.
Oh!
It, like, rounds up to 5.
Oh my god!
I just wish it was longer, frankly. I need to go back and read the series that it's in, is the thing. Because I want it to be longer, and by golly it is! This is a piece of another thing. So I'm gonna go and read the rest of the series.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was delightful. And I liked the characterization of both of them, that they were both one way on the surface, but different, like, softer versions of themselves in private. Like, that resonated a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I love a SickFic. Because it speaks to me personally.
Yes.
And I love the, like, intimacy thing of it. I love when SickFics are about just how kind you can be to somebody and how, like, sweet a relationship can be. And this was sweet, but still a little edgy. Like, it's got a little bit of kick to it, which I think is really great. Like, when people can be a little sassy to each other, but know when to, like, dial it down and when to, that balance is really hard to get right. And I think this balances really well between the, like, I'm making fun of you, but also, like, I obviously love and care about you very much and want you to feel better. So I loved it.
All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. The show is done.
You say that every time I give you a compliment on the thing. You're like, I'm
It's
leaving.
been so long, especially after the last episode. I feel like,
So, listeners at home, I've eaten since the last episode, which means I'm a lot less mean now.
What was your quote? I have some potatoes in me now.
I have some potatoes in me now.
All right.
Anyway.
So let's go to the one you sent me.
Yeah.
It's called No Longer Alone. It's on Archive of Our Own, and it is a Star Wars fic.
Dun, 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 dun. No one is surprised.
Nope. This is
I really shouldn't make fun of you for sticking to your ships.
No,
I really shouldn't.
That's why I was like, excuse me?
Glass house.
So this is a Star Wars fic, and it's, what do you call it? It's like a three-person relationship? Is there
Polyship.
Polyship. Thank you. I was like, I know there's a word. I don't use it.
Yeah.
A polyship between...
When you told me you don't read polyships, I was like, oh boy, he's gonna have some learning.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a polyship between Poe Dameron, Finn, and Rey.
And read the tags. What are they to each other?
Oh, they are partners.
They are all partners.
They are all partners together.
All three of them are partners together.
Yes.
It's important to me that you knew that.
Yes, I learned.
Yay.
So it's called No Longer Alone. Did not realize that it was by two authors.
Yeah.
So this is that thing where they switch off, right? I would imagine.
I guess so. Or they just did it together and it's on both of their accounts.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, actually.
Yeah, because there's a period in fan fiction where like you would role play,
yeah,
and then you would alternate paragraphs, and it became this very like Frankenstein's monster of a fan fiction. And if you read some of them still read that way, where it's like.
Yeah, where you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of like a good thing that I didn't realize that it was two authors.
Yeah, this reads to me like one thing that they maybe worked on together.
Yeah,
and,
like brainstormed.
They had like a Google Doc or something, and they posted it, and it's on both of their accounts because they're co-authors.
So true. Interesting.
I don't know though.
I hadn't even thought about like what Google Docs has turned like fan fiction writing into. Because they used to be like used to IM people, but now you can like work real time with someone and like beta. Oh my god.
That's true.
Yeah, so it has two authors credited. So the authors are A Singer of Songs and MayGlenn with 2 N's. The summary is quite long. It's an actual excerpt, but I'll read it for you anyway, because consistency. Rey recognized the illness coming on for a few days. She had been sick before on Jakku, though not often. If she had been sick often or very badly, she might have died, with no one to care for her. She remembered once curling up in her...
Is it at?
Or, yep,
I choose at.
Great.
Because it's cuter.
Yep, so we're going to call it at. Caitlin, at us and tell us if it's right or not. She remembered once curling up in her at and barring the door, but Tito had got in and stolen her food while she slept anyway. So knowing she was sick made her paranoid and crabby. As she was working on the Falcon, Chewie said something which she couldn't even understand because her head had gotten muddled, and she threw the tool she was working with across the room to cover up the fact that she couldn't hold it right and screamed at him to leave her alone. Chewbacca had shouted right back and stormed off, which, all things considered, made her feel a bit better. She didn't like being a bully. She had just stood up to go after him when everything around her spun and then went dark, and she dropped like a load of bricks. Which would have been fine, had she not been standing at the top of the Falcon's ramp.
Dun dun dun! Yeah, that summary, it's the type of summary where they just took a chunk of what they wrote.
Not only that, but they cut a few parts of it, so like, it's technically a summary, and it's kind of not really. Yeah.
It's not a great summary, because I think those summaries can work, but are harder.
Especially when it's such a large chunk of text.
Yeah.
I feel like I wanted to like this more than I did.
That's fair. Please explain.
I feel like, because I haven't been in this, this is the second polyship fic you sent me. Mm-hmm. The first one was crack. And I had to ask you, I was like, I don't understand if they were together. So it wasn't like, I wasn't established there. And now I was like, okay, I know this is like 3 people. So I was like, I'm fully ready. But because it's such a like niche thing, like they're sick and that's the thing, I feel like it was hard for me to come to that and like connect with the fact that all 3 of them are together. Because I feel like something like I need to read something where it introduces the fact and then like they get together and they make that decision. When it's an established polyship, because I'm new to it, I'm still like getting my wits about me about what it is.
Interesting.
So I was working with that against me. I definitely see all of the things that you were talking about how you just like want someone to like talk nicely to you and like be comforting, and because it was all that.
We are learning a thing about me today.
It was lovely. So the major problem here is that Rey gets sick. She comes down with the Star Wars equivalent of chickenpox. Yeah. There's a vaccine for you that you're supposed to get as a child. That means that you shouldn't get it anymore. But because she was abandoned, she didn't have like healthcare in Jakku.
She was not vaccinated.
Exactly. She got it, and it's that whole thing of like, it's more serious when you're an adult than it is when you're a kid. So she's sick, and because she was abandoned, she's coping with all of those issues, the thought of like, someone is going to leave me. Specifically, she's so afraid that Poe and Finn are going to leave her because she's sick and she can't take care of herself. So she's dealing with all of that. And it's like the big theme of the piece.
Well, she also, in her sort of delirium, is very self-protective.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And she doesn't really want to, like, be touched. And she doesn't want to be alone, but she also doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And it's that dichotomy that is really, like, angsty and, like, juicy.
Oh, of course. Yeah. The angst. You love the angst.
I do.
Yeah, so kind of like what it was mentioned in the excerpt was the whole, like, she tried curling up with all her stuff, but it got stolen anyway with all her food while she was sick in Jakku. So there's this portion in the story where Finn and Poe finally manage to get her to their room so that she can rest, and she won't sleep unless she has all of the things that are important to her, like, with her. Yeah. So she asks for Poe's, like, flight suit, and she
like, wraps herself up in his flight suit.
And then asks for Finn's jacket, that was Poe's jacket, and then puts that on, too. Yeah. And then she grabs her bag, and then she grabs both of them and doesn't let go, and she falls asleep that way. Yeah. And it's, like, this, like, heartbreaking moment where you're, like, she's just afraid of losing her things, and she, like, won't be able to sleep and, like, rest unless she has, like, a firm grasp on it. So that was really sad. One of the biggest things that really kind of started rubbing me the wrong way real quick was Poe and his fucking nicknames for her. Oh. Like, very often, like, there was not a sentence that was said by Poe that did not have the word sunshine in it.
Okay, that's fair. But, like, I would want that. So.
I get that. The moment that it became too much for me was, I can't find the quote, but I wrote down, "What's wrong, Rey, my sunshine? My sun and moons?" And I was like, dear God.
That's too much.
Yeah, I'm like, we've
gone too far.
We're just throwing out things, like my sugar honey bucket.
But I'm that asshole who does that, so, like, mostly because I think it's funny.
He did not think it was funny.
I know. It would be a little gross in real life, but, like, it's so sickeningly sweet that it's just, like, you know.
I see that. It was almost a little too sickeningly for
Let us go back to the warm and fuzzies for a hot minute, because that's what works for me.
It's very interesting to, again, come into an established polyship and, like, see how the intimacy looks for that. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I was having such a hard time picturing how they were all in the bed together, because in fanfiction, I'm always like, the bed is big enough for 2 people. And now there's 3 people, and I'm like, okay, so whose leg is on hers, and where's her hand? Where does she have her head?
You have logistical questions.
Exactly. I was like, I just need to see it.
I always have logistical questions, so I just don't worry about it.
You just throw it in the box.
It all goes in the box. It doesn't matter.
So that was one of the, like, it wasn't a bad thing, it was just one of those things where I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, how does that look? And there's also the thing of she's sick and she's just started her period, because of course. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, unfortunate, and so it's, like, the epitome of, like, someone taking care of you.
It is so deeply pitiful.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
It's so sweet.
I actually really, for me, like, that moment of her having her period and then being like, we're gonna go clean you up, and, like, being willing to do that for her was so, like, that is an act of intimacy that, like, spoke to me a lot. I was like, the trust inherent in that. And I think that was the scene in this that was like,
Yeah.
Because it was like, she has never had anybody take care of her before.
Absolutely.
And having 2 people in her life that are willing to take care of her to that extent is just so validating and so cute and so good. And I was like, that's really cute. I wouldn't want anyone to do that for me. But that's too far.
Yeah, I definitely read, like, when I was reading that scene, I very much acknowledged, I was like, it's not gonna hit me as hard, because I don't, that's never something that's gonna come up in my life. But I could tell that I was like, this is a big moment. So now we'll reach my favorite part of the whole, it's a 3-chapter fic. After she's taken a shower, they've cleaned her up and she's comfy and nice, and now she wants to go to sleep, but she can't fall asleep without like hearing them talk or do something, and they fucking burst into Can't Help Falling in Love with You, and that's when I started crying. I was like, I can't. There are a few things where like it'll immediately get me, and it's Can't Help Falling in Love with You will always immediately like pull at my heartstrings. Then the second chapter becomes very about her abandonment issues, and like Luke comes in and talks to her about her past and like reveals that she's actually like the great granddaughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, and that was a whole thing that I was like, I don't necessarily feel that it belongs in this fic. Like maybe if the fic was longer and we were gonna unpack all that, sure. But I was like, let's go back to them cuddling together.
I feel like in both of the Star Wars fics I've sent you recently, the how to handle Rey's backstory question comes up, and neither one does so in a way that is satisfactory to you, at least. And like, I don't really care. I think the Rey backstory question is so, until it gets wrapped up in canon, is
Everyone's
always going to
take
be
a shot at it.
Yeah, something that people try to reckon with, but don't have enough canon information to like really fully flesh out.
And I guess that makes sense, but my thing is, I feel like you should pick your battles.
Yeah.
Like, if you're making a sick fic or you're making a hurt comfort, like, it needs to be, like, either about the sickness and she's, like, everyone's really worried, and then, like, oh, she's gonna get better, we're all cuddling, end of sick fic. But then when you try and throw in this, like, backstory and, like, tack it on at the end, it feels like, did we need it?
But don't you just want to, like, pepper in a little bit of more suffering?
Nope. Of course, you love some wump.
I think it's because the more angsty it gets, the more satisfying the happy ending is.
I guess that makes sense. I need it to come from an organic place.
That's fair.
Yeah, so I feel like it failed in that account. And then so the second chapter, is Luke coming and be like, hey, I've been sitting on this for a while I figured it out, but you were not abandoned. Your parents died. And I was like, whoa.
So you're sick and you're an orphan. Good job!
Which, like, and then
fuck you!
She felt better because she, like, the whole thing was like she felt abandoned and she was afraid of people abandoning her again. So maybe now she can just be afraid of them dying.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if this is better or worse.
Exactly. Could you have waited until I was healthy again?
Yeah.
But sure. And so that's the second chapter, and they're contending with all of that. And then the third chapter is she's in bed in the medical unit, by the way, with Poe and Finn. She wakes up and she sees the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or like the Force image of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And they're talking about like, why didn't you claim my great-grandmother or something? And he's like, well, I would have, but I didn't know. And then they have the whole discussion about like, you know, the order, because the Jedi Order, you're not allowed to marry or have children or have any type of relationship that is romantic, because it's seen like a weakness at some point. And they talk about how that, and like Rey is engaged to be married 2 times. Or like once to 2 people. Poly-married. That was an interesting like view, and she was like, well, I'm gonna do it anyway, and she's like, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi's like,
well, yeet myself right out of the Jedi program.
Exactly, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, the Order, and he's like, well, in hindsight, I guess the Jedis are gone, so I don't know that the Order worked very well.
Do whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
Frankly.
Yeah, it was like, there was that type of thing, which I was like, cool. It was a shorter chapter, but I was like, this feels like it should be on the end, like this should expand into a long form fic.
Yeah.
Like something, like it feels out of place here in this particular fan fiction, but
that's fine.
It was cool. I enjoyed it. I felt comforted. I felt warm. Very warm, because 2 people on me, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this.
You were like, I'm envisioning this.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of body heat.
There's so much body heat. I would give it a solid 3.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can take that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right. Let's talk about the College AU I sent you.
The College AU you sent me is called College Coffee and Crushes by nameless_wanderer. It is, wait for it, a Love Simon.
There it is.
Vic. I was waiting for this, honestly.
Same.
So it is in both Love Simon the movie and Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda book fandom tags. And I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie. The summary of it is, Simon arrives at his lecture class 15 minutes too early, but that's okay because soon he's joined by Bram Greenfield. The two quickly become friends, trying to survive college 1 cup of coffee at a time and hoping that maybe, just maybe, their crushes will turn into something more. Spoiler, it does. This was a very sweet, very straightforward, very fluffy,
very textbook
little college AU. But it was really cute, and I enjoyed it. It was very sweet. It was exactly what the summary led me to believe that it would be. So Simon gets to his class, and he's like, 15 minutes early because he thought it started on the hour.
Yeah.
But it started at the 15.
Because, all college courses start like that for some odd reason.
They're at weird times.
Yeah,
mine was like 8:35 to 12:22. Or
it would be
stupid, like stupid and start and end times. So he gets there and he's the first one in. And then Bram comes in and is like, why didn't it start on the hour? And Simon's like, I know! And then they get to, talking to each other and they realize that they both came to this college, but their best friends went to other colleges on scholarships, so they're kind of solo in this new place, and they're a little, like, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they become friends. They start getting each other coffee, and, when they're having bad days, they make each other talk about their feelings.
Yep.
So they start talking about what they want to do, and Simon's like, I don't know, I kind of like theater. I might audition for this student musical thing, and Bram is like, you should do it.
Yeah.
You should go for it. I think you would be great.
Yeah.
And Simon's like, you met me 6 minutes ago. Why do you think I should do this? And Bram's like, I don't know, you just look like a performer. And he's like, okay. So he does it. He does audition for it. Mm-hmm. So they become really close friends. And then Simon pulls his first college all-nighter, which is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he basically spends all night writing an essay. In this universe, it's because the Wi-Fi went out. And I was like, that's generous. I have been to college.
Yep.
I did that to myself. The Wi-Fi was fine. I was an idiot. Same. So this is a gentle assessment of how college goes.
Someone's in for a rude awakening if they're a high school student who wrote this.
Yeah, so... Yeah, that's true. I feel like whoever wrote this maybe is a high school student because it's very much like you go to class on time and you have to attend class. Yeah. Spoiler alert, you do not have to really show up to college classes. No. You should.
Absolutely.
But like...
Yeah, so there comes a point where classes don't take attendance anymore. Yeah. And you're just like, I'll show up for the quizzes.
Yeah, you show up for the quizzes, you do the reading, and, like, half of it, unless you're in a discussion-based, like, small class, you kind of get away with it. And, like, professors certainly don't show up on time. And, like, college is very different from high school.
And the rule is, if they're 15 minutes late, you can go. Oh.
That is a rule someone said somewhere, and now every college
in the U.S.
It. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, Simon pulls his first all-nighter, and he goes to his 8 a.m. class with Bram, and Bram is like, you are... dysfunctional. Like, you are not working. Let's go get coffee. And so Bram's like, we'll just wait until the sign around sheet comes around, sign ourselves in, and then ditch. And he was like, can we do that? And he was like, yeah, it's college. Which is totally true. You can do that in college. In
fact, you can just text a classmate and be like, hey, check my name out.
We used to swap back and forth signing each other in all the time.
Yep.
Sorry, Mom. Oops. Sorry about that college tuition you paid for. So they go and get coffee, and it's like, they just talk about how they're doing in college and how he's like, I don't know, Simon's like, I'm exhausted and everything sucks and I don't really know what I'm doing and like, it's a mistake for me being here. And this was a little weird where Bram was like, stop being mean to my friend. And
I thought that was real strange.
That was a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a thing that someone would do and that would go well.
Yeah.
But I didn't worry about it too much. Like,
in the box it goes.
In the box it goes. But he tries to make Simon realize that he's just being hard on himself unfairly and should, get some sleep. And basically sends him, asks him if he would go to his soccer game later in that week. And then is like, you should go home and take a nap. Which is actually the worst thing you can do if you pull an all-nighter, by the way.
Yeah, because then your sleep schedule's fucked.
Yep, you should just stay awake. Mainline caffeine for a little while and then fall asleep at like 8 p.m.
8 p.m., yep.
Yeah, so that's what you do. So he is now invited to this soccer game. Is Taylor... I couldn't remember in the movie who Taylor was.
I was trying to remember if she was in the movie. I don't think so. I think
she may not be?
No, I think she was like the Rachel Berry in the book of the drama club in his school.
Okay. So Taylor, who is a book character who I was unfamiliar with, on the day of the game shows up and happens to be there in support of her friend's boyfriend. And so she and Simon are in the stands, like talking, catching up, hanging out.
They have this whole really adorable interaction where it's mentioned that Taylor has mellowed out from like the high-strung bitch she was in drama club.
She realizes that she was kind of like little fish in a big pond situation, or big fish,
little pond.
Yeah, and then she went to college and was like, I needed to chill out.
Yeah, and so like Simon's telling her like, I got like an ensemble part in this like student-produced musical, and she's like, great, tell me when it is, I will be here. Yeah. And it's so sweet, and he's like, oh, you don't have to, like I know that it's a small thing, and she's like, Simon, if it's something that you're in and you're excited about, I would love to come. And it's such a sweet moment.
So they're catching up in the stands, and it's great. And then he comes out to her. in that moment.
He does, that's right.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really come out to a bunch of people.
Yeah. This is presuming that the thing with Martin didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like alternate universe.
Yeah, he was not outed by anybody. So at this point, he says something along the lines of, like, it's really just my parents. Like, even my friends don't really know.
Yeah, and the blue jock thing is not a thing either.
It didn't happen. The show that he's in is about, like, queer experience. And in discussing the content of the show, he talks about how much it resonates with him because he's gay.
Yeah.
So that's how he comes out to her. And he's like, I'm honestly not sure why I told you. And she's like, well, I'm glad you did.
But I think, like, that is such a realistic thing, because oftentimes I find myself coming out about random things, and sometimes, yeah, it's about the fact that I'm gay, but honestly, I've found myself coming out to people, not necessarily about that I'm gay, because anyone can tell that I'm gay. But I remember, like, once I was getting dropped off, and I just, like, poured my guts out about my parents' divorce, and I was like, I don't know why I told you that.
Sometimes you just have moments of, like, trust and vulnerability
with people. Like, you feel like it has to come out, and it's like, oh, it has to come out now, it's coming. There it is. I'm gay.
I vomited some information.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they wrap up their conversation, and she's like, so are you into this Bram guy? Like, what's going on there? And she's like, yeah, he's cute, and I kind of like him. And she's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Like, why don't you tell him? And Simon's like, well, the worst case scenario is he turns out to be a homophobe and he hates me forever.
And I lose my only friend.
And I lose my only friend in college. That would be bad.
Yeah, it would be bad.
And Taylor's like, well, I mean, are you sure he's straight? Like, what are you basing all this off of? You have to ask the question. Use your words, Simon. And he's like, no, I'm actually really good with uncertainty. Like, I'm kind of okay not opening that box and leaving that question unanswered because I really don't want to ruin the thing that we have. Yeah. Which is fair.
Yeah. And an important thing that happens there is that at some point, while he's talking to Taylor, he turns around, he catches Bram's eye. And Bram is looking at them, and it's like he couldn't tell what the expression on Bram's face was, and so he waved, but then Bram like turned around and just never turned to look at Simon the rest of the game.
Yeah. So then they go to class the next day or whatever, the next Monday, and Bram is like really grumpy, and really angry. Yeah. And Simon's like, "What happened?" Like, and he's like, "Didn't walk his usual path to class."
Yeah,
and
he was late as opposed to the 15
Bram
minutes
was
early.
late and, like, didn't really speak to him. And Simon's like, what did I do? Like, I'm confused here. Like, it's Monday. Like, I get we're all little grumpy gills on Monday. But, like, I'm gonna...
Exactly like that.
I'm gonna need you... Like, why are you acting so weird? Yeah. And Bram won't answer, so he's like, fine, we're going to get coffee. And I'm buying.
Yes.
This is it. We're not taking no for an answer.
Thank God.
And Bram is like, fine, whatever. So they get coffee. Bram is being a little bitter bust. And... Simon's like, will you tell me now why you're angry at me? I guess I'm just gonna guess. Okay, like, I didn't know that Bram was short for Abraham until this weekend, and I didn't tell you that, and now I have, and now you're mad at me? And he just keeps guessing, like, kind of ridiculous things. Yep. And he's like, I can't guess anymore. Like, I can't apologize if I don't know what I did. And Bram is like, did you enjoy the game? And Simon's like, yeah, I had a great time. Like, it was great. You won. It was great. I saw you. You saw me.
I was cheering you on.
Yeah, like, what is so weird about this? And Bram's just like... And Simon's like, look, I'm sorry. Whatever I did, clearly I made you angry. Like, clearly I did something wrong. I don't want to lose you as a friend. Can you forgive me? I'm sorry. And Bram's like, no, because I'm being a baby. I think I just misunderstood something. Yeah. And someone's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, we're good. And then he's like, okay, we're good. And then Bram is like, so why don't you tell me about that girl you like? And Simon goes, the record stops. There's a scritch noise. Yep. And he goes, what? As you recall, Simon is gay. Yeah. So, Bram don't know that. Nope. But Simon do.
And we do, audience. Yeah. We do.
So Bram's like, that girl you invited to the game. And Simon's like, I didn't invite anyone to the game, dude. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And Bram's like, I saw you two. You were, like, chatting and having a good time. Like, I saw it. And Simon's like, Taylor? You think Taylor and I? That's so funny. Incredible. And Simon's like, we went to school together. We did shows together. She was there to see, like, her friend's boyfriend. She hugged me. I came out to her in that conversation because I am gay.
Surprise!
Surprise. And Bram just goes, oh, sorry. I didn't. No. And Simon's like, it's fine. I didn't really tell people, but, like, I hope this doesn't change how you think of me. And Bram's like, nah, it doesn't really change things because now I think of you as being 10 times braver than I initially thought you were, which is a little cliche. And I was like...
You are so hateful.
I know. I'm a hateful queer. It's fine. It was just it was a little cliche in the moment.
Yeah,
but I was
that's
like, sure.
absolutely fair.
Okay, fine. So they're good. They walk away from that conversation good. And then Simon performs in his musical.
Yeah.
It's show night. And Bram comes to the show.
As do Martin and Taylor.
But they are less important.
Correct.
So he comes off the stage and he's like, great. And they're talking, everybody's talking about how great he is. And he goes to find Bram. And he finds Bram outside, and Bram has a whole bouquet of flowers for him, which is so cute. And he's like, thanks, like, it's really great. Like, I had a good time. And Bram was like, you were so good. And Bram basically says, I've been meaning to tell you I've had a crush on you for a while. Pretty much since the moment we met.
Cute.
And I didn't tell you because I don't really tell people that I'm gay.
Surprise,
And
everyone.
Simon's like, wait, is that why you were so angry after the game? And Bram's like, yeah, I'm dumb. So I guess Taylor, at some point during the show, had told him to, like...
Yeah, because she sits next to him.
Get himself together and tell Simon that he likes him. So they get together, and it's like, would you maybe want to get coffee or dinner or lunch or just food with me? And they decide they're going to go on a date, and they go kiss, kissy, kiss. And then they're together, and it's cute. The end.
Thank you, Erin.
It was very fanfic.
Absolutely.
It was like a little trope bingo, and I was into it.
A little trope bingo.
It was cute.
I love it.
Like, if you want just like a good little feel-good college AU that is sweet and full of good things, then this is a good option.
It was a good one, yeah. I was feeling some fluff that day, apparently.
Yeah.
I was a very soft boy. I did not want any angst.
You were very soft Alan that day. Fluff with a tiny bit of angst in the middle is the tag. I would argue that that's not even angst.
No, not at all.
It's gentle hurt comfort.
Yes.
I would rate this like a 3.7.
Nice.
It's good.
Good.
It's on the upper end for me.
Yeah.
But it's like...
Yeah, it's not like, it doesn't push the envelope. It doesn't like redefine anything.
No.
It's very
run of the
very
mill,
solid.
It's,
very solid.
Yeah. But like when you're in that headspace where you just essentially want to read a rom-com.
Yeah, exactly.
That fills that need. So what did I send you?
Okay, so you sent me... I'm very excited. 2 new fandoms were added to our collection.
Finally.
This episode.
We're only, 6 episodes in?
6 episodes in. So you sent me Be Nothing But Magic by...
Good luck!
Kopfkinote.
Kopfkinote.
Kopfkinote. It's spelled Kopfkinote. It's an archive of our own, and it is The Magicians fanfic.
Yo.
Yep, it's Quentin and Elliot.
Quelliot.
The summary says, Quentin writes love letters to people he doesn't know for a little bit of cash. He's not sure what amount of cash, if such an amount even exists, is enough to make him write a love letter to Elliot.
Wah.
Thank you. So, I should preface this. I have not seen The Magicians, and I absolutely loathed the first book, and so I'm very adamant that I do not want to watch the show.
I picked a fanfic that you did not need to see the show at all to
it was very appreciated.
Intentionally.
Yes, it worked great. The summary, I think, sets us up really well. Quentin has this, business where people, they email this anonymous email saying, can you write a love letter for Erin? And I wanted to say that I love the color of her eyes when she wears her green overalls. And stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is my best look.
Hosier would think so.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. And so eventually he gets an email asking him to write a love letter to Elliot. Quentin is, hesitant about it because he's like, is it that he doesn't really know him, or is it that he, is interested in him, but,
both.
Yeah.
So it does draw a little bit on the earlier seasons of the show where Quentin sort of knows of Elliot and Elliot knows of Quentin. Mm-hmm. They are kind of tentatively friends, but they don't know each other super well.
Right.
And you can read it as Quentin a little bit holding a torch for Elliot and Elliot a little bit holding a torch for Quentin, but not acting on it. Gotcha.
There's a whole 2 or 3 days where Quentin is ignoring this email in his inbox because he doesn't want to. And eventually he's like, hey, I need more information. What do you want him to feel when he reads it? Or why do you want to write a letter to him in the first place? And the person just replies, I want Elliot Waugh to know that he is loved and for him to feel loved.
I have a headcanon of this fic that I think somebody who like didn't actually want a love letter for Elliot sent it.
Yeah.
There was a piece of me that was like, did Elliot send this
So that's the thing is, spoilers, you never find out who initially sent this letter to Elliot or wanted to send this letter to Elliot. And I always thought that it was the person. I thought that Elliot was just really sad and wanted to feel loved and so sent it for himself. But
I think you could read it that way.
You could, but it doesn't ever, like, he makes no mention of it, you know?
Right.
But I guess that makes sense. And so my thought is, like, what if this was actually some poor girl holding a torch for this other person, and then they just get together and she just paid $25 to, like, get two other people together?
I choose to believe that it was either Elliot himself or like, Margot, friend, who was, like, just trying to, like, set him up a little bit. Yeah.
That's interesting. But yeah, Penny's the one who delivers the letters for Quentin, and they're roommates. Mm-hmm. They were roommates.
Again, they were roommates.
And so essentially they start exchanging letters. So Elliot sends a letter back to Quentin, who he doesn't know is Quentin, saying, hey, dear Anonymous, I hate to admit that I've been kind of waiting for a letter of my own since I heard you were doing this thing. I just thought it would be better written or something.
I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I've decided to offer you some critique free of charge so that your love letter writing business may continue to flourish in the future. And so Quentin writes back, and like they start this correspondence where they just start like, you know, shooting the shit and like actually revealing things about themselves. It's that whole thing of like anonymity makes it feel like you can bare your soul to this person. But Quentin replies, don't call me anonymous. It makes me sound like I'm some kind of weird 4chan hacker dude. You can call me Q. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Mm-hmm. Are you absolutely shitting me right now,
like,
Quentin?
How many people do you know with that name that starts with Q?
Absolutely. And so
Elliot's a dumbass.
And then somewhere in the middle of the fic, they've been corresponding for like a week or two. It's set up that Elliot and Quentin will only ever hang out when they meet in like the common room or whatnot, like when they happen to be hanging out together in that common room. They kind of
make their paths cross.
Exactly. They start to be like, hey, let's hang out. I'm doing some studying or whatnot. But at a certain point they're there, and Margot's talking to Elliot about the letters, and Elliot is like, well, I don't know who it is. All I know is that Penny delivers them. And Quentin walks in, and Margot's like, Quentin, isn't Penny your roommate? And Quentin's like, yeah. And Elliot's like, I just wonder who Q could be. Quentin, would you... And I was like, what the fuck is this?
It could not be more obvious if you tried.
I was so sure that Elliot at that point knew and was going to play along, but it's not written that way. It's not written that he knows. And so in the midst of their letter writing things, like Elliot starts to talk about the fact that he was raised in a farm and that he only got to Columbia. By the way, it's set in Columbia University. So that he only got in based on like a scholarship, an academic scholarship, and talking about like imposter syndrome, which is what Quentin was like, I feel like I don't belong. And Elliot's like, well, shut the fuck up because I'm a farm boy and I definitely don't belong.
Yeah.
And so they have
there are plenty of us out here who are just trying to
They have a nice little pity party together. Yeah. So that's what's happening in the letters. On the outside, they like hang out in this common room and start to make excuses to hang out together and like just spend time together. They'll bring each other coffee and all of that good stuff. And one of the things that starts to become apparent in Elliot's writing is that he's an alcoholic or that he has an alcohol problem. Is that canon?
Yeah.
Rough.
In the show, particularly early on, Elliot is a heavy partier. And he kind of makes jokes about it.
I see, yeah.
And then in the first season, he has to kill the man he had been dating, who is possessed by the Beast, who is the villain of the first season.
Rough.
And after that point, Elliot is very heavily on substances to try to like deal with the fact that he had to do that. All of that stuff about being raised on a farm and like creating himself is something that in the show he shared with that first boyfriend.
Aww.
And it becomes clear through the show that actually the boyfriend had been possessed the whole time.
No!
And he was like, Elliot's like, was any of it real? Like, I don't know.
That hurts.
And then he has to kill him. He's the one who like slits his throat.
Oh.
In the heat of a like battle.
I never want to watch the show.
Yeah.
Ever.
And Elliot kind of has a breakdown. I mean, he really can't handle that. And he's very much sort of a lush character.
Sure.
But there is that recognition that it's kind of a problem.
That's rough.
Yeah.
So in this fic, that is translated into his feeling of not being accepted. His parents, like, are homophobic and, like, don't accept him. And at one point, there's a day where Elliot is having a bad day. His father called, like, 6 times and left, like, 6 voicemails, and they were all homophobic rants at him and so forth. And so he's drunk in the common room. It's late. He's in front of the fire. Quentin sits next to him, trying to comfort him. And then they end up making out, and Quentin, like, backs away, knowing what he knows, and he's like, oh god, I can't.
He has a little, like, moment of crisis, because, like, it's not fair for me to, like, make a move on him when he doesn't know that I am this letter writer. Like, that's not fair. But Elliot reads it as him rejecting him, because he's quote-unquote straight.
Yeah. And then Elliot sends a Q another letter asking about how he is, and saying, like, I'm not good right now, I kissed this guy. But he panicked because he's straight, and, like, eventually Quentin is in his room debating how to reply to that letter when there's a knock at his door, and it's Elliot, and he was like, hey, I'm supposed to talk to Penny about something, and Quentin's like, oh, well, he's not here yet, so you can just come in and sit down, and he goes off into the kitchen to get, like, water or something, comes back to find Elliot reading the letter from Elliot to him, like, essentially figuring out that he's Q.
Took him way too long.
Honestly, I can't. And he's like, I'm glad it's you, Quentin. I didn't want it to be anyone else. And then it becomes a thing of, like, Quentin and Elliot kind of reading over the letters and kind of deciding, well, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And Quentin being like, well, I think we already work well together. Like, I think the letters are proof of, what do you call it?
It's a show thing. Proof of concept.
God damn it, Erin.
It's a show thing. So, you can understand this without all of this context. Yeah. Perfectly fine.
Obviously I did, yeah.
But in the show, Elliot and Quentin go on an alternate timeline quest to solve the mosaic, which is a puzzle. And you have to put together a series of tiles in a mosaic that shows the beauty of all life. And in this episode, they literally grow old together. Aww. And then Elliot dies. Quentin gets the key, which is the solution to the puzzle, passes it on, and, like, that part of the quest is over. Margot resets the timeline. So they come back to where they had left to go on this quest, and they don't remember it.
No!
Yeah, so later in the series...
Oh, fuck this.
They remember it.
I'm so annoyed.
They remember the whole thing. They're like, wait, did this actually happen? Like, is this real? And I think Elliot goes, it happened. This is real. And Quentin looks at him and is like, well, why don't we give it a shot? We have proof of concept that we worked together for 50 years. Like, and Elliot says no. And says, basically, we were in a situation where we didn't have anyone but each other. Given choices, you wouldn't choose me and I wouldn't choose you. And Quentin is so heartbroken in that moment. Like, the actor who played it was very much like, oh, okay. And, like, he starts crying, and, like, it's really painful. I'm going to go on a rant later about this show. Let me finish this first. But all of that sort of, like, would you choose me? All of that comes from the show.
This is so annoying.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's not your fault. Yeah, so the way that that's translated here is Quentin saying we have proof of concept that we would work, look at all these letters, and Elliot being like, no, because the only reason you're choosing me is because of these letters, which I was like, that's what, it makes sense.
Because that's who you are.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, weird. And so he turns him down, and then Elliot gets really drunk. Quentin finds him and is like, all right, let's get you into your bed and, like, away from, all the drinking. And they have this moment where, like, Elliot essentially pours his heart out and was like, I'm scared and, like, I want to. And I'm trying to find the quotations. Quentin moves towards the direction of the door. Elliot says the words tumbling out and only vaguely in Quentin's direction, I've never loved anyone like I love you. And it's very much that thing where, like, he's very drunk and Quentin is like, well, tell me when you're sober and stuff. Then the final act is Elliot, he's like, I'm going to read it to you because it's funny. Elliot was waiting. Well, he was doing more than that. He was nursing a hangover in a cup of water in a coffee cup, sitting on a bench and trying to catch Quentin Coldwater coming out of his class. The plan was simple. Spot Quentin, hand him the letter before the boy can even process what's happening, and walk away as fast as he can in his hungover state. Most important of all, be fucking brave. And that's incredible because that's not at all what happened.
None of that happens.
The
plan goes to shit instantly.
Class lets out and there's way more people than he was expecting, and he's like, where the fuck is he? And of course Quentin comes up behind him and is like, hey.
No, he's like, fuck!
And he's like, I had this letter and it was gonna be perfect, and he's like, it's not gonna come out great and I'm sorry, but I love you, essentially. And he's like, I'm sorry I rejected you because I was afraid and I want to be brave like you. And then they kiss and, like, it's so cute. And then the fic ends with Elliot's letter that he was gonna give of Quentin where he was like, I wish I had a better way to tell you how much I love you, but like that's all I've got. And Quentin is like, I don't think you need to worry about that. And it's so beautifully written. And that's the end, and it's cute. I'm going to read you a few quotes, because I loved this fan fiction, and there were some moments that hit me so hard. Like, the way it's written is so beautiful.
It's really good.
So I'm going to read, I have 3, and I don't remember who said them, so good luck. Oh, and one of them I've already said, but it's longer. I've never, he said, the words tumbling out and only vaguely in Quentin's direction, I've never loved anyone like I love you. It was a confession, but not the kind with romantic music swelling in the background with the golden hues of the sun. It was sitting alone in a church pew with your head bowed and your hands clasped, mouthing the words because you're still scared someone might hear it kind of confession. Oh, that hits so... The thought, because I've definitely done that where I've walked into like a church when it's empty or to like a basilica and I'll just sit and like have a moment to myself. And it's so like peaceful and something about having a confession that is that intimate and it's so powerful and it's better than just like those moments. So I was like...
You were like, what?
Yep. Oh, this one says, I love you, Quentin said into the hollow of his neck. With the cadence one might use to say the sky is blue. Pigs can't fly, 1 + 1 is 2. Like it was just another universally known constant of the cosmos. And I'm like, it's
so good!
It's so good! It's like, it's so natural.
Yeah.
Like, of course I love you. Ugh.
Ellen is actively sobbing, y'all.
Honestly, I'm there.
It's fine.
Oh, and this is from the last letter that Quentin writes to Elliot. I like to think things, the important things at least, happen in the specificity of the in-betweens. Not those big grandiose moments, but rather in the transitions between them, the opaque details not yet seen. It's about what has seeped into the cracks of the bedroom wall and what lingers in the space behind the fridge and what has been forgotten underneath the couch. I think I'm more fool than brave, but I promise I'm going somewhere with these nooks and crannies you mentioned you were afraid of. Oh, like... The romance is written so well, and it's like that soft type of romance where it's like, ugh. So I love this fic for the romance of it. And now getting all the context, it all makes more sense. I didn't quite understand like the whole common room thing. Like, did they know each other? And then like he's an alcoholic and then he turns him down. And I was like, why would you turn him down? Like, it just made no sense to me.
Yeah.
But getting all that context of the show, I'm like, oh, it's canon seeping its way into and like being formed into fan fiction. And I understand that now.
Yeah. It's also interesting because The Magicians season 1 is set in a grad school.
Right. Oh, so, is the rest of it not?
They are grad students. Things go to hell so fast that they don't really stay in school.
Harry Potter
but
book 8.
Season 1 is very much set at Brakebills. They kind of go in and out of the school setting after that point, but this is really kind of drawing from that first season where they are really students. So it's kind of funny that it's a college university AU of a college setting story.
That's interesting.
But it is.
Yeah.
Because it
diverges from the plotline.
Yeah, it's taking them to a different college setting.
Love that. So this fic, very good. It's written beautifully. Like, there's so many more things in there that I couldn't just read you the whole fic. If you'd like me to, though.
We're going to start doing audiobooks.
Yes.
Fan fiction.
The bonus episodes are just us reading our faves.
Yeah.
It's beautifully written. I do feel like you don't need to have watched The Magicians, but you're missing out a lot of the context, and it feels very choppy if you don't. All in all, I would give this a 4.2. Yeah,
yay!
Very much enjoyed it. Very much sobbed. It makes me sad. Specifically because of all the stuff you just told me.
Yeah.
And from a rant I think we're about to go into.
Yeah. So, I have feelings about The Magicians, y'all.
Yeah.
And I have a podcast, which means I get to talk about them. I have a lot of feelings.
Yep. So really quick, spoilers, this is the latest season of The Magicians.
Yes.
So if you're not caught up with The Magicians, stop listening immediately.
Yeah, right now. So I got into The Magicians specifically because of Quelliot. I think a lot of people did.
Right.
There was a lot of press and buzz about a canon queer storyline. The showrunners made a big deal out of it. They allowed the actors to talk about it very openly, and it was a big thing. And I think a lot of people jumped on board after specifically both the episode where they went on that quest and had that life together, and then in season 4, episode 5, where Elliot turns Quentin down and they had that whole thing. Because there was kind of a promise, like a narrative promise, that something was going to come from that. Season 4 is all about Quentin trying to save Elliot from being possessed by a monster. you don't really need to know why. But essentially, Elliot refused to let Quentin sacrifice himself in season 3, and in doing so became possessed by a monster. Quentin spends season 4 trying to get him back. And the whole season, they're very sort of narratively building up to Quentin saving Elliot and having a moment to, like, reconcile. And Elliot in season 4, episode 5, which was the big one, has to go through, while he's possessed in his head, the monster has basically put him in a version of the cottage that they live in on Break Bills, which is his happy place, and traps him there with the last person whose body he inhabited. And he was like, how do I get out of this? Like, how do I break free of the monster's hold? And the guy, Charlton, who was the previous victim of the monster, is like, well, the only way to do it is actually to go through your own consciousness, comb through your most traumatic memories that you do not want to relive to try to find a door. It's not going to be easy. You could die. And Elliot's like, well, fuck. And he spends the whole episode going through all of his past traumas.
Oh my god.
Including the time he telekinetically killed someone and realized that's how he had magic.
This is your show. You love some wump.
I love this show. And this is why I was so excited to get into it, because it was so rich and, like, so interesting. He has memory versions of his friends with him as he's traveling and going through these memories. Memory version of Quentin says something to him along the lines of, like, well, Elliot says, you know, you're very brave, Q, and, like, very generous. And Quentin's like, well, you sacrifice for people you love. Aww. And Elliot just literally looks and goes, oh, shit. Oh. I know where we have to go. So he finds the memory of him turning Quentin down, and that's where the door is, which means that's his most traumatic memory. And in the moment, so Alan's crying again.
No, I'm not.
So memory Elliot turns him down, and then the Elliot that is going through this journey looks at memory Q and kisses him and is like, Q, I need you to know that I am going to fix this when I get out of here, and if I can be braver, it's because of you. And goes through the door, and that's the moment where he takes control of his body for the first time all season. Bear in mind, concurrently, Quentin is about to murder him because he thinks it's the only way to get rid of the monster. So in the last moment before they're about to do it, Elliot comes back and is like, Q, it's me. And Quentin's like, come on. Like, enough games.
Would you let me kill you, please?
You've been a homicidal, like, this monster has tortured him, this monster with Elliot's body. So Quentin is very traumatized.
Oh, no.
And they're about to kill him. And he goes, Peaches and Plums, motherfucker, I'm alive in here. And Peaches and Plums comes from that Mosaic timeline. And it's something only Elliot would know.
Yeah.
And Quentin goes, Elliot? And realizes he's alive. And he's like, I am alive in here. And he thwarts the plan to kill him. And the monster takes back over Elliot's body.
No!
But Quentin is like, oh, he's alive. I thought he was dead. Yeah. He's alive. The storyline from there devolves so fucking fast. Like, those writers backtracked away from a canon storyline.
No!
Queer storyline after that. And to the extent that, like, in the last 2 episodes, it feels like they were written by different people.
Gross.
So in the last episode of the season, you go through this whole thing, and all of these characters go on these journeys. They reach the point where they know how to get rid of the monster. They know how to get rid of the monster's sister, who is also somebody inherent in this. And they come up with a plan. And in the last episode, they depossess Elliot of the monster. He gets, like, stabbed in the gut in order to do it. He's dying. Quentin, Alice, and Penny go to the mirror realm to get rid of the monster into this thing called the Seam, which is a kind of Deus Ex Machina thing. We're not going to worry about it.
Sure.
And in getting rid of the monster, Quentin sort of, like, passively commits suicide. And it's played as a really heroic thing.
Of course.
Other people have spoken way more eloquently about why that particular element of the story is problematic than I ever will be able to.
Sure.
It just was. The way that they played it was not safe. It was not respectful of people with mental illness. And it's also really problematic to have a character who's dealt with suicidal ideation his whole life die by essentially, like, heroic suicide and then go to his own funeral where everybody is, like, better off without him.
No.
Yeah, it was bad.
Gross.
So I'm not going to get too into that, although I agree with all of the fandom sort of assessment of that. It was not a safe or respectful thing to do. The thing that I was most angry about was the kill your gays queerbait thing that happened. Fan fiction is fixing that for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so great about fan fiction is that ultimately canon can and often will let you down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fiction out there that they had a chance to make really great and have really great representation, and they chose not to. For one reason or another, they didn't. Fandom has taken this pairing and fucking run with it. And it is so restorative to have agency over a queer storyline. And so when people sort of disparage fanfiction and talk about it as this sort of pithy thing, it can be.
Yeah.
But I have such love and respect, and there feels such a need, particularly for queer people, to have agency and control over storylines.
Absolutely.
Where we don't die.
Yeah.
Where occasionally we might get what we want.
Uh-huh.
We might have a chance at happiness, and we can be full and complicated people with interesting and complicated storylines and not treated as disposable or trauma porn. Which is really what the end of that season was trauma porn.
Yeah. And
super queerbait. Because they also had Quentin get back together with his ex-girlfriend Alice at the end, and I was not happy about that either. Not that, I mean, we could go off on a whole separate rant about how they never label him with a sexuality, and I think it's because the writers conceive of him as a straight man who just dabbles, and the fandom was definitely conceiving him as bisexual. Mm-hmm. That's a separate issue. But because, like, there was a narrative promise that was never fulfilled and was never going to be fulfilled because the writers had known that Quentin was going to die in the season finale, so it felt like queerbait to the nth degree and kill your gays to the nth degree. Which was super frustrating and hurtful. And, like, frankly, like, hurt a lot of people. Yeah. The cast didn't know what was going to happen until, like, the Monday before it aired on a Wednesday. Because they had filmed a dummy ending of the show, which is crazy. Yeah. That's insane. Yeah, the dummy ending had Quentin coming back. So, Hale Appleman, who is a queer man, and talked about how important it is to have queer representation in sci-fi and how happy he was to see Quelliot happen and how Quelliot was endgame in his heart, was made complicit in this queerbait without his consent, which I think is deeply troubling. But I think that's why fanfiction can be so revolutionary in some ways, is that it's taking agency and saying, fuck you. Yeah. No, you don't get to kill us off. You don't get to use us as trauma porn. We're gonna, like, really take a look at this narrative and see it through and follow through on the, narrative promises that you bailed on. I love that, yeah. So, when I get on my high horse about fanfiction, that's what it's about for me. I'm glad, yeah. It's an avenue to representation by and for the people that it is representing, which is not often the case in canon. Correct. Because the people who own TV stations usually are not the people who are most affected by stuff like that. They don't. I need to stop. This is too much emotionally for me to deal with. Yeah, don't watch this show. No, I'm not going to. That has cemented this firmly. The other thing that's really a bummer is that, like, I had recommended this show to people because there was a canon queer storyline, and I think a lot of people did that. And a lot of people did that because there was really good mental health representation in the show and all of this. And it was so ripped away from everybody in that last moment that everybody I know was like, don't watch the show. Don't start, because it's going to be triggering in 18 different ways for you. Like, it's not safe to watch this. No. So that was really upsetting. But I've never seen fandom rally so hard and so fast before. Right. Because no one in at least on my side, like, from what I've been seeing, no one in fandom liked that ending. Mm-hmm. Like, the vast majority of people are saying, that wasn't cool. And it could be for different reasons. Like, people are coming at it with different concerns. Angles, yeah. Because a lot of people are like, narratively, this didn't make sense. It wasn't a good story. It wasn't a good storyline. And people are like, also, bury your gays is a really terrible trope to fall into. And also, mental health representation. And also this. The way that they treated women in the finale was garbage. There are a million reasons to dislike it. But fandom basically immediately was like, they started a Trevor Project fundraiser and raised like $5,000 super fast in the name of the show. People have been really taking care of each other and, like, basically just writing all these fluffy fix-it fics. And being like, the tag that has grown wildly in the Midshits fandom is canon what canon? This is the first time that I've been in a fandom where I feel compelled to comment on people's stories and be like, hey, I'm really grateful that you're still writing this. Mm-hmm. I was really proud of the way that fandom rallied after that finale. It was the first time I'd ever been part of it, and it was really cool. Well, I can't remember of any show in recent history that has pulled this kind of stunt where it's like, it's not just the bury your gay thing, but after, like, having had seasons of like, hey, look at this queer relationship. And using it to critical praise. Yeah. Their viewership went up after they started leaning into it. Yeah, I can't think of any show in recent history that has done that and then immediately pulled a fucking 180 and pulled the rug out from under the fans like that. Gleefully. Right, exactly. For, like, fake woke points, too. It's so dumb. Because they were like, we killed our white male protagonist. Isn't that cool? And everyone was like, he's a mentally ill bisexual man. Like, no. It's not. Your fundamental lack of understanding of intersectionality is, like, hugely problematic.
And there's already, like, rumors or, like, they're trying to backtrack already.
Oh, yeah. Big time. They're like, well, just because he's not a season regular, Jason Ralph, who plays Quentin, just because he's not a series regular anymore doesn't mean he can't come back. And I was like, you guys came out the gate after that finale with a big thing about how he was off the show forever.
Yeah.
This is crisis mode. You are now in damage control mode. So
now let me ask you, what are we hoping for with Magicians? Do we care? Do we want, like, a retcon, or do we want it to just, like, fail and go into a large garbage pile?
I alternate between a couple of different feelings. I personally will no longer be watching the show. Yeah. I will be happily living in my little fanfiction fix-it universe with all my other little queer people, doing what the writers were too chicken shit to do, and having, a happy equality life.
Love it.
Season 5, I don't know if it's better or worse for him to come back, to be honest with you. On the one hand, this is a show where people come back from the dead all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for him to come back.
Yeah.
If that had been the case, I think the problem comes in with all of the extra stuff that they did where they were talking about how he's really off the show and he's really dead this time and we didn't even tell the cast until Monday. And, like, any way you cut it, if he comes back, that was a deeply shitty thing to do.
Yeah, like, they still made that move to do it.
They made that move, and I cannot imagine being on that cast and crew and having been deceived like that.
Yeah.
That does not make for a safe work environment.
No.
So I don't know if it would be better for him to come back, given that situation.
Yeah.
However, of course I would want to see Quelliot become canon endgame, but, like, what I'm confused by is that narratively the season finale we got was more of a series finale. It would have been a terrible series finale and it would have made everyone super angry, but they wrapped up all of the storylines in such a way. Where do you go from here? I don't really care.
For sure.
Because it's one thing to dig yourself into a hole and then in a season finale and then have everybody be like, well, how are you going to get out of this? This was done for pure shock value and it didn't make any narrative sense and it wasn't done well. And then it would have been fine. Like, it would have still been all of those things, but now coupled with the, like, articles and the, like, saying he's really dead and all this shit they pulled in the cast, like, I don't know. If I were particularly Hale Appleman, I would have a very hard time going back.
Yeah, I would leave.
I don't know what kind of contract he's under, but if I were in his shoes, in knowing only what I know of the situation...
Yeah.
If that were the situation I was put in, I would be having a very real conversation with my management team.
Yeah.
Because that's not a safe work environment. So, do I kind of want it to end? Yes, from that perspective. But it's such a shitty ending.
Yeah. Like, you want better for those characters.
Yeah. We want better for every single one of them.
Yeah.
So there's no winning, which is what sucks about it. Because there's no good moving forward. And I certainly don't trust them to fix it.
No.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people are not going to be watching season 5.
Good.
Yeah. It's a bummer.
Let it rot.
But plenty of people are writing really fantastic fanfiction.
And that's what we should focus on.
That is what we should focus on. So thank you, fandom, for being the representation that we actually need and deserve in, particularly queer spaces. But
I love that we do this show in, like, a sense of, like, talking about all of these things about fandom and how... fan fiction isn't just, like, the weird and, like... And we've talked about it. We talked about it in our pilot, I believe, about, like, how there's so many podcasts out there that are just, reading the weirdest stories we could find and stuff, but I enjoy the...
SpongeBob and a duck!
Yes.
They're like, ew. Why?
Yep. Really appreciative that there's a medium now that we can use to, like, shine a light on all of the positive things that fan fiction can bring.
So... in sort of a stunning circular way, Lev Grossman, who wrote the original Magicians trilogy, has been on the record about talking about fan fiction in a very positive way.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So one of the quotes that has been making the rounds on Tumblr is this quote from him that I'm going to read and that I think really speaks to taking fan fiction seriously in the way that we do. Quote, I adore the way fan fiction writers engage with and critique source texts by manipulating them and breaking their rules. Some of it is straight up homage, but a lot of fan fiction is really aggressive towards the source text. One tends to think of it as written by total fanboys and fangirls as a kind of worshipful act, but a lot of times you'll read these stories and it'll be like, what if Star Trek had an openly gay character on the bridge? And of course the point is that they don't, and they wouldn't because they don't have the balls or they are beholden to their advertisers or whatever. There's a powerful critique, almost punk-like anger being expressed there, which I find fascinating and interesting and cool. I think that sums up why we love this.
Yeah.
And why we do this.
Thanks, Lev Grossman.
Thank you. I'm sorry they killed your character.
Yeah, I would like to hear what his reaction has been to this.
He's talked about it a little bit. He went on a podcast and he talked about how it was kind of a punch in the gut. And he wrote those books when he was coming out of a really bad depressive episode. And Quentin really represented him. And to see him die on TV was really hard. It's unclear whether or not he had given permission.
Right.
Sarah Gamble claims that they ran it by him and he said yes. He made it kind of sound like they kind of did and kind of didn't. And I'm sure the truth lies somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But that quote has been making the rounds a lot with regards to the magicians and how fandom has been so powerful in its rebuke and its fixing of it.
Exactly.
Almost. And refusing to sort of let the narrative be dominated by other people. Like, no.
Fuck that.
This is dumb. I like punk-like anger.
It's good.
Because that is what it is. It's very like, well, fuck you and your rules. I'm going to make them kissy kiss.
Yes!
And that's revolutionary
so
in some
today,
ways.
I learned that Erin and I are punks.
Yeah!
Hardcore. All right. Well, I think that's a good place.
That's plenty of rant for me to edit later. I can go on this rant forever, but it's actually unhealthy for me to focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is probably the last time I will rant about the season finale about the magicians, but I will 100% continue to be sending you Quelliot fics.
Great.
Because it has very quickly become the number one thing that I read.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fic List. If you have any recommendations, feel free to send them our way.
Yeah, we have a Twitter account, so send us your recs. Like, send us some good AUs. Give us your ideas for stuff that we should maybe
or send us
think
stuff
about.
that you're writing. We would love to take a look.
Absolutely. We are all in this happy little boat together.
Yeah.
Reading all of our little SickFics and college AUs and everything that makes us happy. And sad.
Yeah.
But ultimately very fulfilled.
Exactly. Well, till next time.
Bye, y'all.